Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're tackling what is easily one of the most stressful realities facing every CISO out there. For years, vulnerability management ran on this really comfortable, almost relaxing rhythm. A bug is disclosed, a patch follows, and your IT team rolls it out during a scheduled maintenance window, usually while everyone's fast asleep. But today, we're diving into exactly why that traditional wait for a patch model is completely dead, and more importantly, what you actually need to do about it. Okay, let's jump right into this honestly jarring statistic: 5 days. That is the average time it now takes attackers to weaponize a new vulnerability. And look, if we're being completely honest, recent analyses are showing that out in the real world, that figure is effectively same day. That means the exploit is weaponized and actively being used before an official patch even exists from the vendor. Crazy, right?
So here's the absolute crux of the problem, this massive patch gap. On one side, you have attackers moving at lightning speed, literally single-digit days or even hours. On the other side, enterprise organizations taking anywhere from 30 to 150 days to actually get a patch rolled out across their production environments. It's like the attackers are in an all-out sprint and the defenders are trying to walk with heavy anchors tied to their ankles.
And this isn't just theoretical stuff. This is happening right now on the front lines in maximum severity incidents. Take React to Shell, for example, a brutal pre-authentication remote code execution bug. Or look at the Clop ransomware crew, just waltzing right through a hole in Oracle e-business suite. And then there's the ToolShell SharePoint compromise, which managed to take down hundreds of exposed servers long before those scheduled maintenance windows even opened up. Section 1. The broken model. Why patching harder isn't a viable strategy. The sheer speed of weaponization we're seeing is just staggering. Threat intelligence groups track somewhere between 60 to 100 zero days being actively exploited in the wild every single year. Out of those, nearly a third are weaponized within 24 hours of public disclosure. So that old, comfortable assumption that you have weeks of runway to test and deploy a patch, that is entirely gone.
When you really look at the zero-day reality of edge devices, think your VPN gateways, firewalls, secure email gateways. The median gap to mass exploitation is essentially 0 days. Zero. Now, compare that against the sobering reality for defenders. Half of all critical vulnerabilities listed on CISA's known exploited vulnerabilities catalog sit unpatched for 55 days after a fix ships. It's just a terrifying mismatch.
So here's the crucial takeaway from all this. You absolutely cannot win this race by just trying to patch faster. It's impossible. The vendor is always going to take time to reproduce the bug, write the fix, and then test it against millions of configurations so they don't break production. You have to rely on compensating controls that don't depend on a vendor's timeline at all.
Section 2. The defender's playbook. Strategic compensating controls to survive the gap.
All right, so the single most effective technique incident response teams use is called virtual patching. Instead of trying to fix the underlying flaw in the application's actual code, you write an emergency rule inside a web application firewall or an intrusion prevention system. It blocks the exact malicious payload or request pattern the exploit is relying on. Basically, you aren't fixing the broken lock, you're just dropping a massive boulder right in front of the door so the exploit can't even get through.
But of course, there's a catch. You can't virtually patch what you don't know you have. The exact moment a zero-day drops, your engineering teams need to be able to answer 3 critical asset inventory questions in hours, not days. Do we run this? Where is it located? And is it exposed directly to the internet? The teams that can map this instantly are the ones who successfully contain the blast radius. The teams relying on manual audits, well, they're the ones cleaning up web shells for weeks.
Now, if a system absolutely cannot be patched today, you have to assume it's going to be compromised, and you need to immediately implement segmentation. Isolate that asset, enforce strict least privilege access, and log internal traffic. Perimeter edge appliances usually have this broad, completely unmonitored trust into your corporate network. Stripping that trust away using microsegmentation is frankly one of the highest leverage defensive moves you can possibly make. With hundreds of new vulnerabilities popping up every single day, you just can't patch everything, which means ruthless prioritization is key. An actively exploited bug on a public gateway, especially if it's validated by the CISA KEV catalog, that demands immediate drop-everything emergency action. Conversely, a theoretical high CVSS score on a totally isolated internal dev server, that's a routine priority. You have to patch the right bugs, not just the most bugs. And because 0 days are, by definition, undisclosed, you simply can't write a static detection signature for them. So your primary fallback has to be aggressive endpoint detection and response telemetry. You've got to watch for malicious post-exploitation behavior, stuff like anomalous process execution, unauthorized lateral movement, or weird, unexpected outbound connections. You catch the threat because the application starts behaving abnormally, not because you recognize the exploit payload itself. If you look at retrospectives of major zero-day incidents, the companies that respond the fastest don't improvise mid-breach. They safely bypass those painful weeks-long change review queues because they already have pre-built emergency processes in place. They have a specifically named decision maker ready to go and a fully tested rollback plan ready to execute at a moment's notice.
Finally, your speed of awareness directly dictates your speed of response. Subscribing to direct vendor advisories, specialized threat intel feeds, and automated agency alerts gives your engineering team a massively critical head start. Very often, hearing about a threat just a few hours before it hits the mainstream news cycle is the only difference between successfully deploying a virtual patch and discovering an active breach.
Section 3. ToolShell Case Study. The Playbook in Practice.
Just look at the reality of modern defense during that massive ToolShell exploit. The exploit dropped on day 0 and was fully weaponized by day 1. If organizations had just sat around waiting for the universal vendor patch, which by the way didn't arrive until week 4, they would have been absolutely devastated. The organizations that actually survived did so by implementing strict network segmentation and vendor configuration workarounds by day 2. They closed the gap themselves. Section 4. Redefining the defender's goal. The paradigm shift in vulnerability management.
We all just have to accept a really hard reality here. Vendors simply cannot ship bulletproof patches in 24 hours. The intense quality assurance required to make sure a fix doesn't accidentally take down millions of global customers means that a next-day timeline is a complete operational impossibility. It's just not going to happen.
So instead of fighting an unwinnable race, you have to consistently apply the structured playbook. Map your exposure instantly. Deploy those virtual patches at the WAF or IPS layer. Enforce strict micro-segmentation. Prioritize using real-world exploitation data from CISA. Monitor behavioral telemetry rather than just static signatures. And please, pre-build your emergency change controls. This is exactly how the best engineering teams secure their environments while the vendor takes the time to engineer a permanent fix. So, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. How do we make the vendor's patch timeline completely irrelevant? Because ultimately, your goal isn't to figure out how to patch faster than the rest of the world. Your true goal is to build a defensive posture that is so resilient and so layered with compensating controls that a gap of 5 days, 30 days, or even 150 days simply doesn't matter to your organization's risk profile. Think about how you can take these concepts and implement them to bridge your own patch gap. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep their defenses sharp.